You receive a notification about another powerful new tool, and all you feel is a deep kind of tired. It could be an AI assistant that can write your emails, or an app that creates images you could only dream of before. You see everyone else online talking about the amazing things they're doing with it, sharing their experiments, but you just keep doing things the way you've always done them. It's not that you're against AI, you're just on autopilot, and there is absolutely no room for anything new today. You close the notification and get back to the to-do list you already know how to complete. I've been thinking about this feeling a lot lately because I feel it too. It's easy to call it being busy or being overwhelmed, but I think there's something deeper going on. It's becoming really clear that these new AI tools aren't making people less creative. Instead, I think they are just holding up a giant mirror, showing us how little we were taught to be creative or to question things in the first place. I see it all the time with smart, capable people I know, friends, colleagues. They're good at their jobs, they are reliable, they meet their deadlines, they follow the instructions perfectly. But when a tool comes along that can do all the instruction following for them, suddenly people feel lost, like they have nothing to do. It's like their job was to perfectly color inside the lines, and they became masters at it, never going over the edge. Then a machine comes along that can color inside the lines instantly and perfectly every time. So the new job becomes deciding what to draw, what colors to use, or whether to draw on the page at all. And that's where the freeze happens. They don't experiment. They don't ask, what if? They just keep going through the motions, maybe searching for a new set of lines to color in. And it made me wonder, where does that come from? Why do so many of us, when given a tool for exploration, choose to just keep walking down the same familiar hallway, checking the same doors we already know are unlocked? I think the answer starts a long, long time ago, before computers and to-do lists. It starts with how we learn to see the world and our place in it. There's this idea I've been sitting with, the idea that some of us were raised for the house and others were raised for the world. When you're raised for the house, the goal is to be good, to be quiet, and to make things easy for everyone else. It's about fitting in, not standing out. The house is a system with rules, and your job is to learn the rules and follow them without complaint. It's a place where asking why is seen as talking back. It's a childhood where saying no isn't a right you have, but a rebellion you stage. When you aren't allowed to have an opinion about what's for dinner, or to question a decision your parents made, or to make a real choice for yourself, you learn a very deep and lasting lesson. And the lesson is this: your job is to listen and obey. Your curiosity is a problem to be managed. Your voice doesn't really matter, at least not as much as keeping the peace. You get praised for being easy, for being no trouble at all. You learn that there's a right way to do things, and it's almost never your way. You learn that efficiency means following the system that's already in place, not imagining a new one. You might get good grades, you might be called responsible, you might even be held up as an example to other kids, but underneath all of that external success, there's a quiet hum of doubt, a sense that your own ideas, if you even have them, aren't quite as legitimate as the ones that come from someone older, someone with more authority, someone who already knows how things are supposed to work. This isn't about blame. Most parents are doing their absolute best with the tools and understanding they have. Many of them were raised the same way. It's a cycle that gets passed down, generation after generation, often with love and good intentions. The parent who says, "because I said so," isn't usually trying to crush a child's spirit. They're tired, they're overwhelmed, they're trying to get dinner on the table and everyone to bed on time. But the impact is real, even when the intention is good. And here's what's really at stake. It's a developmental milestone when a child asks questions, when they ask why, when they push back or negotiate. It means they're learning to think for themselves. When we shut that down, we're teaching them something deeper than just following rules. We're teaching them that the back and forth, the negotiation, the dialogue itself is not allowed. And that's the skill that matters most when working with technology. When you're working with AI, with any new tool, really, you have to be willing to go back and forth, To say, no, that's not quite right. Try it this way. What if we adjusted this part? Can you do it differently? You have to be comfortable with that kind of tenacious conversation, that push and pull, that refining and redirecting until you get what you actually want. Now, let's fast forward 20, 30, maybe 40 years. We're all grown up and navigating the world. That child who was raised for the house is now an adult sitting at a desk or looking at their phone on the couch after a long day. And a new technology appears that promises to take away the repetitive, instruction-following parts of their job, the boring stuff. What's left, after the tool has done its work, is the part that needs curiosity, the part that needs new ideas, the part that needs a human to ask, but why do we do it this way at all? Or, what if we tried something completely different? And here's where it gets interesting. The way we approach the tool, the way we engage with it or avoid it entirely, that's shaped by decades of learning, by thousands of tiny moments in childhood that taught us whether our ideas matter, whether trying something new is safe, whether we're the kind of person who gets to create, or just the kind who executes someone else's vision. So, if you grow up in a home where asking questions or expressing doubt was seen as defiance, where the conversation was always one way, you never develop those negotiation muscles. You never learn that it can make sense to say, this isn't working for me, let's try something else. You never get comfortable with the process of testing, adjusting, and trying again. This is a slippery slope. Because now, as an adult, when AI gives you something that's not quite right or the tool doesn't work the way you expected, you might just accept it as, this must be the best it can do. And if you know that what it gave you won't be good enough, you're more likely to abandon it. Someone raised for the world, on the other hand, learns a different set of lessons. Their curiosity is encouraged. They might be allowed to take apart the broken toaster to see how it works, even if it makes a mess. They are asked for their opinion and actually listened to. They learn that making a mistake isn't a disaster, it's just part of figuring things out. Their job isn't to keep things neat and tidy for others, but to go out, explore, get their hands dirty, and come back with a story to tell. They learn that their voice has power, and their ideas are worth exploring. When they say, I have an idea, the response isn't, not now, or that won't work. It's, tell me more, or let's try it and see what happens. These children learn to tolerate uncertainty. They learn that not knowing the answer yet is different from being wrong. They practice recovering from failure in small, safe ways, so that by the time they're adults, taking a risk, such as trying to figure out what AI might do well for them, doesn't feel like stepping off a cliff. It feels like the next logical step in a process they've been practicing their whole lives. They also learn something crucial about their own judgment. They learn to trust it. When they have a gut feeling that something isn't quite right or that there might be a better way, they've been taught to pay attention to that feeling, to investigate it, to give it space to grow into a full thought. They're more likely to push AI to perform better. For someone raised for the house, that same gut feeling often gets pushed down, dismissed, or second-guessed into silence before it ever has a chance to become anything real. Before AI, it was easier to hide behind effort. People could say, I'm working hard, I'm doing my best. We knew that innovation is slow, particularly in giant organizations where changing culture can feel almost impossible. You could spend months in meetings, years building consensus, and still end up with incremental improvements at best. So when nothing changed, we had excuses. The system is slow, change takes time, we're doing the best we can. But now we have tools that can do the repetitive stuff in seconds. And what's left is the question, can you actually think? Are you actually creative? Do you actually know how to push for something better? And here's what makes it worse. Most people aren't even curious about the tools. They're not asking, what can this do? How does it work? What are its limitations? They're either ignoring it entirely or using it in the most superficial way possible, like using a handsaw to take down a 50-foot tree when there's a chainsaw sitting right there in the truck. They treat AI like it's magic, like it can do everything, or they treat it like it's garbage, like it can't do anything. But very few people are actually engaging with it as a tool, something with strengths and weaknesses, something that requires skill and judgment to use well. We need to be honest about one more thing. If you've ever heard someone say that the patriarchy also hurts men, this is an example of what they mean. If we want technology to help all people instead of just overwhelming them or harming them, we need everyone helping to shape how we work with it. But just as girls are often taught that being accommodating and easy is more important than being curious or bold, boys are often taught that expressing doubt, admitting confusion, or asking for help isn't masculine. Both are being set up to struggle in an AI-driven world, just differently. These patterns make it harder to work effectively with AI because the results are the same: adults who aren't equipped to shape technology in their lives. It's an urgent issue because if people don't learn to work with these tools, to push them, to help determine how they're used, then AI will just keep perpetuating the same power structures that have always existed, the same biases, and the same assumptions about who gets to lead and who gets to follow. Most people building these technologies aren't neutral. They aren't diverse. They never have to choose between paying rent and buying groceries, or wonder if they can afford a copay to see a doctor, or whether their car will make it through another month. They're solving problems from inside a bubble so insulated that the everyday struggles people face don't even register to them as real. So if we want any chance of these tools serving everyone, not just replicating the same old hierarchies and blind spots, we need people from all walks of life to give themselves permission to engage, to get uncomfortable, to be bad at it for a while, and to claim space in a conversation that has historically been dominated by a very narrow slice of humanity. Right now, we're at a turning point. These tools are powerful. They're going to keep getting more powerful. And the question is, who gets to decide how they're used? Is it going to be a handful of people at the top of tech companies? People who may or may not have our best interests at heart? Or is it going to be all of us, equipped with the skills and the confidence to engage with these tools critically, creatively, and thoughtfully? Because here's the truth. If most people remain passive, if most people stay on autopilot, if most people keep treating technology like something that just happens to them instead of something they can shape and direct, then we're handing over control. We're saying, sure, do whatever you want with this. I'm just going to keep my head down and hope it works out. But if we can help people develop the skills to engage, to question, to experiment, to push back when something doesn't feel right, then we have a chance. We have a chance to make sure these tools are used in ways that actually help, that actually make life better, not just faster or more efficient, but genuinely better. This is about more than just individual success. It's about whether we, as a society, have the capacity to steer our own future. The big problems we're facing, climate change, inequality, mental health crises, political division, none of those are going to be solved by people who are just coasting. None of those are going to be solved by people who are afraid to think differently, to ask hard questions, to try something that might not work. We need people who can do more than follow instructions. We need people who can see a problem and imagine a solution that doesn't exist yet. We need people who aren't afraid to fail publicly while they're figuring it out. We need people who understand that technology is a tool, not a master, and that we get to decide how it fits into our lives. And right now, we don't have nearly enough of those people, not because they're not capable, but because they were never taught. They were never given the foundation, the confidence, the critical thinking skills, the resilience to try, fail, and try again. So what we're talking about here isn't just about getting better at using AI. It's about something much deeper. It's about breaking a cycle. It's about recognizing that the way we were raised, the way we were taught to see ourselves and our place in the world, that doesn't have to be our forever. We can choose differently now. We can give ourselves the permission we never got as kids, permission to question, permission to experiment, permission to say, I don't think this is working and I want to try something else. And we can start teaching the next generation differently, not to be obedient for the sake of convenience, but to be thoughtful. Not to follow instructions without question, but to understand why the instructions exist in the first place and whether they still make sense. Because if we don't, if we just keep raising people for the house instead of for the world, then we're going to keep ending up in the same place. A tiny fraction of people driving change and everyone else just trying to keep up, feeling overwhelmed, feeling powerless, feeling like technology is something happening to them instead of something they have any control over. That's not the future we want, and it's not the future we have to accept. We can build something different. But it starts with us. It starts with recognizing the patterns we've inherited and deciding whether we want to keep them. It starts with being willing to look at that notification about a new tool and, instead of closing it out of exhaustion, asking ourselves, what if I spent 10 minutes just playing with this? What if I let myself be curious? It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be revolutionary. It can be as simple as opening that new tool and just clicking around. It can be asking yourself, if I could change one thing about how I do this task, what would it be? It can be admitting out loud or just to yourself, I don't know, and that's okay. Because that's where it starts. Not with having all the answers, not with suddenly becoming an expert overnight, but with giving ourselves permission to not know, to wonder, to try, to fail, to try again. With recognizing that we're not victims of technology, we're not passive recipients of whatever gets handed to us, we're the ones who get to decide how this goes. We're in charge of our future, not just our individual futures, but our collective one. And if we want that future to be shaped by thoughtfulness instead of passivity, by creativity instead of compliance, by people who care instead of people who are just coasting, then we have to start now. We have to start with ourselves. We have to start with being willing to step out of the autopilot mode, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it feels easier to just keep doing what we've always done. The tools will keep coming, the technology will keep changing, but the real transformation isn't in the tools, it's in us. It's in whether we're willing to engage, to learn, to question, to shape the world we're living in instead of just letting it shape us. One small, brave, curious step at a time. That's how we move from being people who things happen to being people who make things happen. That's how we take back control. That's how we make sure technology serves us instead of the other way around. I'm Luma, and if any of this made you think differently, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with someone. Also, follow This Online Life so you don't miss what comes next, because the more of us who learn to work with technology to improve our lives, the better equipped we will be to build a future we actually want. Thanks for listening.